Hi, this is Manda L and
Randall D Schweigert.
and we are recording our assignment for report number 4 for our Stevenson Center Fellowship.
All right, well, Amanda, if you want to kick us off and tell us a little bit about yourself, your hometown, your bachelor's degree, where you went to school, and how you ended up at Stevenson.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm originally from Southern California, Oxnard, California to be exact, and I went to my undergrad at UC Santa Barbara studying global studies because I thought that was the best option if I wanted to do Peace Corps.
Definitely.
So I did that. I graduated. I worked for a couple of years, and then I joined Peace Corps Nicaragua, where I was an environmental educator, and worked with teachers, teaching teachers how to teach, and then focused on some more environmental focused activities. But yeah, and then I did Peace Corps Guatemala after that. I always forget about that one.
Directly after Peace Corps Nicaragua?
Directly after. It was like a 3-month break.
Whoa. And what inspired you to do Peace Corps response after doing 2 years in Nicaragua?
Yeah, well, I got back from Peace Corps Nicaragua, and like a week before the 2016 presidential elections, and then things happened, and I was just like, I'm not quite prepared for this as a reality, and so I re-signed up, and it turns out 6 months doesn't make that big of a difference. But yeah, and then, I worked for Habitat for Humanity for 4 years, and then I found the Stevenson Center through a cohort fellowship. So, what about you?
So I'm originally from New Mexico, small town called Las Vegas. I was fortunate enough to learn Spanish growing up. I was in a Spanish immersion program, and I stayed in New Mexico for my undergrad, and I studied economics. While I was in undergrad, I had the opportunity to travel to Nicaragua and other countries to study economic development, and it seemed like everywhere I went, I was running into Peace Corps volunteers or returned volunteers, and most of them had pretty good things to say and really encouraged me to apply. So after I was done with undergrad, there was a month in between graduating and when I went to Peace Corps Panama, where I was a sustainable agriculture volunteer for 2 years, and then my third year I extended and I was a regional coordinator for a province, and after that came to DC, and I was working in the Office of Medical Services for Peace Corps headquarters, helping with applicants to apply for Peace Corps and do their medical clearance. And Peace Corps headquarters is the only federal agency where you can't serve or work more than 5 years. And I was coming up on 4 years, and I thought, how can I make myself more marketable? And I found Peace Corps, or the Stevenson Center, through one of the Coverdales online, and that's how I ended up in Stevenson Center at ISU.
That's so cool. A fun fact too is that my sister also was an ag volunteer for Peace Corps Panama. So small world.
Yeah. And I think, if I'm not mistaken, we just missed each other. Yeah. Because I was 2014 to 2017, and she left 2013.
Yeah, so just like barely missing each other. Okay. So what was like what is there a moment during Peace Corps where you were just like, this is the type of work I want to keep doing, community development? Was there a moment within Peace Corps, or was that always a seed that was inside of you?
I think there's a specific moment that I had a regional coordinator. At this point, I had been in my service for probably a year and a half, and the regional coordinator of my province, he asked me if I wanted to go hike with him to a different community and sit in on one of these community meetings and sort of shadow him, because I had a thought in my mind that I did want to extend at that point. Mm-hmm. And we hiked and met with some community leaders, and it was just a great time. And I just asked him, like, this is what you do your entire third year? You just go to different communities, you just hike around and see different volunteers and help people out? And he's like, yeah, that's what I do. I'm like, this sounds fantastic. Wow. So I signed up for a third year, and I pretty much just hiked all the time and made sure that volunteers were supported in their service, whether that was connecting them with outside agencies or helping them translate. Not all volunteers enter at the same Spanish level. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I mean, that's when I knew that I wanted to interact with more community members and just really help with community development. And what about you? So you said that you worked for Habitat. Mm-hmm. And had you always had an interest in that area, or was there a moment during your service or any time that really sparked that interest?
Yeah, I think Peace Corps really solidified inside of myself that I wanted to work at the ground level, like grassroots community engagement, but I wasn't, it wasn't specified when I was applying for jobs right out of Peace Corps. I kind of just threw my hat at all of these different nonprofits, mm-hmm. and Habitat was the first one to bite, and I was not in a position to turn down a job. Yep. And I got to experience so much through housing. I started in construction, and then I did a job training program with our local housing authority, and then I created our training manuals, and then I was a community engagement specialist, and then I did financial coaching, and then I saw all these aspects of housing and just saw how great and useful affordable housing organizations are in particular. And after those 4 years, I just kind of knew that housing was going to be my niche. Mm-hmm. But yeah.
And so when you were looking for Coverdale programs, was there a specific master's that you had in mind? I know right now you're doing it in political science. Did you always want to do in that, or were you just looking to see what they offer?
Well, I think what attracted me to this specific program was the applied community and economic development side, mm-hmm. of things. The specific degree felt less important to me. Mm-hmm. But I felt like my background was more geared towards political science, so that's why I decided to do the political science route in it. But yeah, I think that's what ultimately I was attracted to that aspect of the program. What about you?
Yeah, I think in terms of Coverdale's, there's a limited selection that focus on economics. ISU is one of them, and I think Georgia is another one. And ISU, I listened to some of the Stevenson podcasts that they had recorded and just researched it, and it seemed like the level of support that Stevenson provides was very attractive. Mm-hmm. And you can't really beat a tuition waiver, yeah. and a stipend as well. And when I Googled Normal, Illinois, too, it seemed like a nice community.
Yeah.
Yeah. Small and cute. And so that's what really inspired me to pick the program, and economics in particular, because I didn't have a lot of experience with data analytics, and seemed like this program, applied economics, was very focused on data and coding and all of that. So that is why I picked it. And that's what we did a lot in my first year. So,
and now you work for a economic development corporation, right?
Yeah. So I work for BNEDC, Bloomington Normal Economic Development Council, and so I stayed in Bloomington Normal, and I didn't know what to expect at first, and they kind of met me where I was at and asked me about my experience, and they heard that I extended a third year in Panama and what I did there, with like visiting communities and helping them to prepare for incoming volunteers and seeing if they had projects and the capacity to support a volunteer. So I felt like after they heard that, they're like, this is perfect, because we serve the entire county, and my main role there is going to rural communities, meeting with their mayors, seeing what property they have available for potential development and projects, and helping them apply for grants. And I see a lot of similar parallels to what I did in Panama, with just going out into the community and meeting with people, and it's been great. It's been a lot of fun.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and you get to use your degree too.
Exactly.
But just like so directly,
Mm-hmm.
which is
Who would have thunk?
So wild. Well, just also like of all of the organizations that we interviewed with, it
Mm-hmm.
just seems like such a great fit.
Yeah,
for you.
Definitely. And I had low expectations going into the interviews, and after that interview I was like, wow, yeah, I think I'd be able to apply my degree, like you said, directly, and it's been great so far. And what about you? So where'd you end up with your fellowship?
Yeah, so I'm currently at the Housing Assistance Council, otherwise known as HAC, and it is like a national nonprofit that specializes and focuses on rural America and affordable housing.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have different branches within our organization. We have a lending branch, we have a technical assistance, we do research and provide research and information, and then we also do we have a policy team as well. And basically all of those branches work together to basically address the affordable housing issues within specifically rural America, because urban areas all those issues are very well known, but rural housing looks very different. But rural America covers 97% of the land mass in the United States, so it's just so important.
97%?
97%
I
of
would have
the
never
United
guessed.
States.
I would have thought like maybe like 43% or something, but wow.
Yeah, so I get to work in housing every day, and my main project is working on researching current farm worker housing trends, and it's a very under researched and misunderstood community, just because they're usually in rural areas where they're working, and housing is just not necessarily the priority. And so my current project is to get a better understanding, find the data around what their housing conditions are, where they're located, how much they cost, and then using that information to make policy recommendations to USDA and HUD.
Yeah. And so you're located in DC.
Located in the nation's capital.
The nation's capital. And were you thinking about after your fellowship, are you going to stay around the area, stay in the same sort of realm of hack and housing, or what are you thinking?
Well, we're currently in talks of me staying on with hack, so it's been a really great partnership with them, and we're leaning towards yes, and regardless of if that goes through or not, I feel like hack has brought me so many different connections within DC, and so I'll be staying here regardless, but hopefully with hack and continue with hack. What about you? What are your aspirations?
Yeah, so I honestly didn't even know that an economic development council was a thing before my fellowship, and it's all about just helping existing businesses thrive, and same with bringing in new businesses, and it's a very attractive sort of like career and industry for me. Like, I've had a lot of fun in my fellowship. It's been challenging in some ways, but also very rewarding. So I would love to stay in this field and move on up. I had the opportunity in the fall to go to this like basic economic development training. They call it basic. It's not like I'm not talking down.
You're not talking military. It's
right.
Basic training.
Yeah, and then you can continue to go to conferences, and then there's this big exam at the end of like a few years of training and conferences where you can become a certified economic developer.
Wow.
Yeah. So
That's super cool.
the EDC was able to cover the first step of me being certified, and if I continue in this industry, I can go to different conferences and go on in that area. And I think the number of certified economic developers in this country and nationwide is in the thousands, so it's pretty small. And I think that would be awesome to do too, although their exam for it, they say like 3% pass, and it's very difficult. Yeah.
Wow.
But yeah, I would love to do that, and I really enjoy Bloomington Normal, and I would be okay with sticking around there. So we'll see how it goes. And one of the reasons why we're able to record this today in DC is because my organization came out to DC for a project called One Voice, where we bring 3 projects to DC to lobby for federal dollars to help with projects. And through this trip, we brought a lot of our board members, and I've made a lot of like connections throughout my fellowship. So if I don't continue on with the EDC, there's plenty of opportunity to go in a different route and be able to apply my knowledge from this program and also this fellowship and form it into a career. It's kind of up in the air in some ways, but
we still have time.
Yeah, we still have time.
We still have time, and there's still work to be done.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Well, to wrap this conversation up, what advice would you give to a new fellow or a new professional, someone who's looking to get into local economic development?
Yeah, I think as much as it can be difficult sometimes, my biggest piece of advice is just network. Sometimes I hate saying that,
absolutely.
but just like really use the connections that you have, and put yourself out there, and you never know what's gonna happen. There's some days that I'm like, do I really want to go to this work event? It's after hours. It's like 6 to 8 p.m. I don't want to do this, but I've had I've made a lot of connections through those different events. So yeah, my biggest piece of advice is just put yourself out there and create as many contacts as you can, and they'll really help you in the future. And yeah, what about you? Do you have any advice for new fellows or professionals that want to get into like housing or that kind of field?
Yeah, well, I would just say to keep your mind open to housing. There's just so many different avenues within housing, whether it's rural housing or urban housing or homelessness or youth homelessness or transitional housing for people in recovery. There's just so many different avenues, and I think it's important to keep your mind open about housing. Sometimes people find that it can be like just an uphill battle that you can never win, but I think just keeping your mind open, and if there is a field within housing that you're interested in, like for me was farm worker housing, just push for it because somebody else is interested in it and somebody else is willing to back you finding more out about it. And so, yeah, I would just say keep your mind open.
Good advice. Yeah, very solid. Yeah.
All right.
Well, thank you for doing this with me.
Yeah. It was great. And this is the end.
This is the end.